Chapter 8. Natural Resources. Reading Objectives. Resources. Classification of natural resources. Distribution of natural resources. Conservation of natural resources. Sustainable development. The Earth's surface includes soil, minerals, and fossil fuels. Apart from this, water, air, forests, sun and light are other resources found on the Earth. All these resources make human beings' life comfortable. The history of the universe tells us that before man set foot on the Earth, other form of living and non-living organism had already existed. In the early stages, man had not many requirements. Shelter, food and some form of covering was sufficient. Man did not know how to make use of the gifts of nature and hence, his life depends upon the environment. He had to depend on the environment for hunting to provide food for himself, eating wild fruits and plants available with his environment and living in caves for shelter. He was fully dependent on nature for his basic needs and had no knowledge of exploiting nature for his benefit. However, with the passage of time, humans developed techniques to convert these gifts of nature into useful articles which could fulfill their requirements. Thus, the gifts of nature become resources. The inventions and discoveries added to heightened outlooks and desires. Now he began exploiting nature not for satisfying his basic needs, but for making his life comfortable. Here, for the first time he felt that nature had given resources within his environment. Soon he started exploiting nature to meet not only his needs but to satisfy his greed, too. Enrich yourself. Protection of natural resources. In 1982 the UN developed the World Charter for Nature. We have to protect it just like our mother, which recognized the need to protect nature from further depletion due to human activity. It states that measures need to be taken at all societal levels, from international to individual, to protect nature. It outlines the need for sustainable use of natural resources and suggests that the protection of resources should be incorporated into national and international systems of law. To look at the importance of protecting natural resources further, the World Ethic of Sustainability, developed by the IUCN, WWF and the UNEP in 1990, set out 8 values for sustainability, including the need to protect natural resources from depletion. Since the development of these documents, many measures have been taken to protect natural resources, including establishment of the scientific field and practice of conservation biology and habitat conservation, respectively. Do you know, heavy water is deuterium oxide, water that is a little heavier than ordinary water because it contains the hydrogen isotope deuterium rather than ordinary hydrogen. Heavy water is used in down nuclear reactions. Resources. What is resource, or to be more precise, natural resource? Anything that fulfills human needs is called a resource. In your own house or in your environment, many types of resource can be seen. Natural resources are the substance which come naturally and are viewed worthy in their relatively unmodified or natural form. Man himself is a form of natural resource. Nature has bestowed the earth with tremendous and ample reserve of resources. It has taken millions of years for nature to deposit these resources above the surface, on the surface and below the surface of the earth. Water bodies in the form of groundwater are precious for the survival of life. Air that blows is also another natural gift. Forests covering large land masses have within them thousands of types of plant and animal life. They ensure the survival of life on the earth. Then there are fossil fuels, gases and minerals which are deposited in the bottom of the earth. These are the sources of development for a nation. Unfortunately, the developing countries have misused their part of natural resources because of deficiency of technology. Overpopulation in the third world countries have taken a heavy toll on natural resources. Vast forest areas are cleared of their trees to pave way for agricultural and housing purposes. Depletion of forests has emerged the wildlife who lose their natural habitats when forests are destroyed. Pollutions of oceans and other water bodies through industrial effluents, insecticides, pesticide, and nuclear wastes has caused the choking of the life of water flora and fauna. In short, man has so far acted as great villain against nature as far as the exploitation of natural resources is concerned. Classification of natural resources. Natural resources are classified differently on different grounds. These can be classified on the basis of their origin, renewability, etc. Classification of resources helps in knowing about them in a more detailed form. Biotic and abiotic resources. On the basis of origin, natural resources can be biotic and abiotic resources. Biotic resources are also known as living resources. They are derived from animals and plants, i.e. from living world. Wildlife, forests, grasslands, marine life, etc. constitute the biotic resources. The abiotic resources are known as non-living things. They include all physical or non-living things, like air, water and soil, land. These three components of abiotic resources constitute inorganic materials, such as carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide, and dead organic matter like proteins, carbohydrates, lipids and humic substances. Other abiotic resources are rainfall, light, temperature, etc. The fossil fuels, like coal, petroleum, natural gas are abiotic resources which when exhausted are not renewed. It takes millions of years to cover the losses. The development of nations owes much to the use of these abiotic resources. Do you know, ONGC, Oil and Natural Gas Commission, in India does the surveying of the earth and deep waters. They do so for finding oil and natural gas. Natural gas and oil are potential resources. Renewable and non-renewable resources. On the basis of durability, natural resources can be renewable resources and non-renewable resources. Resources that can be renewed or replenished quickly are called the renewable resources. The best examples of this category are solar energy, air, water, animals, plants and humans. The resources with fixed quantity on the earth and which cannot be produced in short time periods are known as non-renewable resources. Fossil fuels, like petroleum, natural gas, coals, and minerals are non-renewable resources. It may take thousands of years to renew them. These resources are decreasing with every passing day. Today, we have reached a stage where very little of these non-renewable resources are left. Man, in the greed of making life comfortable for himself, has exploited these resources and is still continuing to exploit. The petroleum prices today have reached all-time high and are still rising. New alternatives of energy are being sought, in order to save whatever is left, as these resources are diminishing at a fast rate. Get to know more. Solar energy, a source of renewable energy. Solar energy facilities use concentrating solar power, CSP, as the heat source to boil water, or they convert sunlight directly to electricity using solar cells, also known as photovoltaics, PV. Solar energy is used today in a number of ways. As heat for making hot water, heating buildings and cooking. To generate electricity with solar cells or heat engines. Total global solar energy generation capacity averaged 40% annual growth from 2000 to 2011. Solar is the fastest growing source of renewable electricity in the world and in the United States, but it is starting from a small base. How can we conserve energy? Green lighting tips. 1. Turn off lights that you are not using. 2. Buy compact fluorescent bulbs, which reduce energy use by up to 75%. 3. Do not place lamps near thermostat. 4. Use dimmer, timer and motion detector in indoor and outdoor lighting. Potential and actual resources. On the basis of their use and development, natural resources can be actual resources and potential resources. The resources which are yet to be explored and which can only be accessed for their use are called potential resources. For example, mining experts surveys various forests and other landform to hunt for coal mines and mineral deposits. Water in our river is a good example of potential resources. Hydropower generation by various multi-purpose projects built on important rivers is another example of potential resources, and after processing, these are converted into actual resources. Actual resources are known as developed resources, because these are the resources which are at present in use and their estimated reserves are known. Oil reserves in Saudi Arabia, hydroelectric power of Niagara Falls, deposits of coal in the Damodar Valley of India are known of their resources. Thus these are actual resources. Man-made resources. Besides natural resources, there are other resources provided by man himself. However, these resources are provided with the help of natural resources. Man began to live a settled life when agriculture became his profession. He cleared forests to grow crops. This way he destroyed a natural resources, in order to provide an artificial resources. He used water, the most precious natural source, for irrigating the fields. Agriculture is the main activity of man to produce food for the growing population. To build industries, the natural resources are used. 20th century is seen as the peak of man's progress in industrialization. Most of the inventions and discoveries took place in this century. Electricity is the most noteworthy of man's excellence as a super being in the universe. This resource provided by man to himself has changed the very face of the earth. Today, life cannot be imagined without electricity. Electricity is said to be the driving force of life on the earth. The fast-moving transport systems and means of communication, like telephone and internet, are noteworthy resources provided by man. Today life is not complete without these man-made resources. In reality, man has been trying his best to get a blend of natural and artificial resources to make his life more and more comfortable. Human resources. The human are not only the most important but also the ultimate resource on the earth. They can make the best use of natural resources through their knowledge. The human beings can explore, develop and convert the natural resources into useful goods as per their abilities and demands. The human beings are the only one who can make more resources and put them to best possible use. In fact, The human resources imply not only to the numbers but also to the physical and mental abilities of the people. Education and good health have helped humans to become a valuable resource. The human resource, like the natural resources, are not distributed uniformly on the Earth's surface. They differ greatly not only in their special distribution but also in terms of their education, age, sex, standard of living etc. Distribution of natural resources. While natural resources are available widely, they are not valuable everywhere. Some resources might be abundantly available in certain parts of the world and not available in other parts. So there is an uneven distribution of natural resources. This is because of the different landforms as well as different climate all over the world. Also, the number of people living at any place and their dependence on the natural resources vary. Moreover, technology and money power need to convert natural raw material into resources. Resources also change over time. For example, mineral reserves at a particular place might have been abundant at one time but exhausted after 150 years. Conservation of resources. In early times, the density of population was low and the requirements of human beings were not vast. The main resources of their livelihood were plants and animals, which were easily available in the environment. Hence, they never felt the need for the conservation of resources. Fact 1. Name a biotic resource. 2. What is a renewable resources? With scientific and technological progress, human beings began using resources at a much larger scale. The uninterrupted increase in population also increased the requirement for resources. This made a situation in which the non-renewable resources could be depleted after some time. Hence, a balance between population growth and the utilization of resources is definitely necessary. Conservation does not prohibit man from making use of resources. It rather demands man's foresight to use the resources wisely. The main purpose of conservation is to ensure survival of life in all its forms and variety. Therefore, conservation of natural resources is essential and meant to preserve resources for future generation. Since there exists close relationship between man, plants and animals and the environment in which they live, the concern for health of the environment is also a goal of conservation. Several methods have been used for conservation of biotic and abiotic resources. These include creating political institutions, like enactment of rules and regulations, involvement of non-governmental organizations, creation of specially protected areas, like biosphere reserves, national parks and wildlife sanctuaries, about which we shall learn subsequently. The United Nations is also promoting international trade under the concept of globalization. Through development of trade and commerce, wide dispersal and efficient utilization of resources is promoted. Sustainable development. Sustainable development refers to a mode of human development in which resource use aims to meet human needs while preserving the environment so that these needs can be met not only in the present, but also for generations to come. United Nations is today concerned with a large number of global issues on conservation. The United Nations sponsored the first Earth Summit in 1992 in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. Its theme was Environment and Development. The conference turned out to be the largest congregation of world leaders in history. It produced some binding treaties to reduce pollution in order to prevent conditions but future as well. The main principles of sustainable development are change our personal attitude and practices. Made aware of eco-friendly methods of utilization of resources for sustainable development. Take steps using resources judiciously. Fulfill the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Conserve our resources by avoiding further damage to the environment and preserve the vast diversity on the earth. Searching dictionary. Natural resources. Gifts provided by nature. Biotic resources. Those resources which we get from living beings. Abiotic resources. Those resources which we get from non-living things. Potential resources. Things that may be converted into an asset in the future worth the advancement of technology. Word to know. The inventions and discoveries added to heightened outlook and desires. Now man began exploiting nature not for satisfying his basic needs, but for making his life comfortable. Natural resources are the substances which come naturally and are viewed worthy in their relatively unmodified or natural form. Biotic resources are also known as living resources, and the abiotic resources are also known as non-living things. Resources that can be renewed or replenished quickly are called the renewable resources. Fossil fuels, like petroleum, natural gas, coals, and minerals are non-renewable resources. Hydropower generation by various multi-purpose projects on our important rivers is another example of potential resources. The human resources imply not only to the number, but also to the physical and mental abilities of the people.